As the investigation into General Marcus Hayes' death progressed, Officer Ryan Caldwell found himself poring over every detail of that fateful night. He replayed the events in his mind endlessly, searching for answers, or at least some semblance of peace. But the more he dug, the more questions arose. Who was this man who had simply been passing through? Why hadn't he identified himself when confronted? And why did it feel like there were pieces missing from the puzzle? One afternoon, while reviewing official records provided by the military liaison, Ryan stumbled upon something unexpected. A name he recognized. The file listed Ava Hayes, the general's teenage daughter, as his only child. What caught Ryan's attention wasn't just her age. It was her mother's name. Lisa Monroe. The moment he saw it, his stomach tightened. Lisa Monroe. He knew that name. How could he forget? She had been part of his life once, long before either of them became who they were today. Lisa and Ryan had met during their college years. They weren't romantically involved, just close friends who bonded over shared interests and late-night study sessions. Back then, Lisa was ambitious, sharp-witted, and fiercely determined to make a difference in the world. Ryan admired her drive, even if he sometimes teased her about being too serious. After graduation, though, their paths diverged. Lisa moved away without much explanation, leaving behind only a vague promise to stay in touch. Over time, life got busy, and they lost contact completely. Now, decades later, here she was again, not as the bright-eyed student he remembered, but as the mother of the girl left behind after the tragedy. A wave of guilt washed over Ryan. This wasn't just another case. It was deeply personal. He had failed someone connected to his own past, someone he once cared about. The realization hit him hard, forcing him to confront emotions he'd buried long ago. Determined to understand more, Ryan reached out to mutual acquaintances, piecing together fragments of Lisa's life since they parted ways. He learned she had joined the FBI shortly after leaving college, rising quickly through the ranks thanks to her intelligence and dedication. Along the way, she met Marcus Hayes, a decorated Army officer whose charisma and leadership captivated everyone around him. Their relationship blossomed, resulting in the birth of Ava, a daughter Ryan now realized carried both her parents' strength and resilience. But knowing all this didn't ease Ryan's turmoil. If anything, it made things worse. Every new piece of information reminded him of what he'd taken away. Not only had he ended the life of a national hero, but he'd also shattered the family of a woman he once called a friend. The weight of it all threatened to crush him. Still, Ryan couldn't ignore the connection between them. It felt like fate, or maybe irony, had brought them back together under such tragic circumstances. As much as he dreaded facing Lisa, he knew he owed it to her, and to himself, to try. Maybe, just maybe, talking to her would bring clarity, or perhaps it would only deepen the pain. Either way, Ryan understood one thing for certain. This wasn't just about accountability anymore. It was about understanding, reconciliation, and finding a way to move forward, even if doing so seemed impossible. It was a cold, moonlit night in the quiet suburbs of Washington, D.C. The streets were empty, save for the occasional hum of a car passing by or the rustling leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Officer Ryan Caldwell sat in his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos as he scanned the darkened neighborhood. A veteran cop with over 15 years on the force, Ryan prided himself on being thorough and careful. He wasn't reckless like some younger officers, nor jaded like others who had seen too much. But tonight felt different, uneasy, almost foreboding. The radio crackled to life, breaking the silence. Dispatch reported an anonymous call about a possible intruder near Maplewood Drive. The caller claimed someone was lurking around a vacant property, though details were vague. It wasn't unusual for such calls to come in, especially in this part of town where homes often sat unoccupied for months. Still, protocol demanded investigation. Ryan grabbed his flashlight, clipped it to his belt, and turned to Max, his loyal K-9 partner. "Let's go, boy," he said softly, patting the dog's head. Max wagged his tail eagerly, his sharp eyes already scanning the surroundings. As they pulled up to the address, Ryan noticed the faint glow of a street lamp casting long shadows across the driveway. Everything seemed eerily still. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows or open doors. Just an old house sitting silently under the pale light. Ryan stepped out of the car, his hand resting lightly on his holster while Max sniffed the air, alert and ready. They moved cautiously toward the side of the house, boots crunching softly against gravel. That's when Ryan heard it, a faint sound like footsteps. His heart quickened as he signaled for Max to stay close. Moving around the corner, he spotted a figure standing near the backyard fence. The man wore a dark jacket and jeans, his face partially obscured by the dim lighting. "Hey, stop right there," Ryan called out firmly, his voice echoing in the quiet night. The figure froze but didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifted slightly, reaching into his pocket. Ryan's instincts kicked in. "Show me your hands. Now," he barked, stepping forward. But the man hesitated, pulling something small from his pocket. In that split second, Ryan made a decision. "Max, apprehend," he commanded. With lightning speed, Max lunged forward, closing the distance between them in seconds. The man stumbled back, trying to fend off the powerful dog, but Max's training took over. Within moments, the situation spiraled out of control. When backup arrived minutes later, the scene was chaotic. Medical personnel rushed to stabilize the injured man, but it was too late. As Ryan stood there, breathing heavily, he finally got a good look at the person lying motionless on the ground. To his horror, he realized it wasn't just some random trespasser. It was General Marcus Hayes, a highly respected U.S. Army officer whose face had been plastered across newspapers during recent military campaigns. The weight of what had happened hit Ryan like a freight train. Later, investigators would piece together that General Hayes had simply stopped to check the area after his car broke down nearby. He hadn't identified himself because he thought he was helping, not confronting danger. For Ryan, the knowledge brought little comfort. All he could think about was how one misstep, one moment of miscommunication, had cost a hero his life. And as dawn broke over the horizon, Ryan knew his world, and countless others, would never be the same again. After the emotionally charged meeting with Lisa and Ava, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something about the night of General Hayes' death didn't add up. The more he replayed the events in his mind, the more questions surfaced. Why had Marcus been in that neighborhood in the first place? Who made the anonymous call to dispatch? And why did everything seem so orchestrated? Determined to find answers, Ryan began digging deeper into the details surrounding the incident. He started by reviewing the original dispatch logs, scrutinizing every word of the caller's report. The voice on the recording was muffled, almost deliberately distorted, and the information provided was vague. Just enough to send officers to the scene, but not enough to raise suspicion. It struck Ryan as odd. Most calls came from concerned neighbors or passersby who gave specific descriptions or reasons for their concern. This one felt different, calculated. His instincts told him to look beyond the surface. With permission from his superiors, Ryan revisited witness statements, hoping to uncover inconsistencies. What he found sent chills down his spine. Several accounts mentioned seeing an unfamiliar car parked near the vacant house earlier that evening. A black sedan with tinted windows. One neighbor even claimed they saw two men arguing near the property before driving off hurriedly. Yet none of this had been included in the initial investigation. Had someone intentionally overlooked these details? Meanwhile, Lisa Monroe launched her own inquiry within the FBI. As a high-ranking officer, she had access to resources most people could only dream of, and she wasn't afraid to use them. Her gut told her that Marcus' death wasn't random. It was targeted. She began cross-referencing recent cases Marcus had been involved in, particularly those related to controversial defense policies he publicly opposed. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Someone inside the system wanted Marcus silenced, and they'd gone to great lengths to make it happen. Lisa's search led her to Deputy Director Samuel Cross, a man known for his ruthless ambition and questionable ethics. When she confronted him during a private meeting, her suspicions were confirmed, but not in the way she expected. Cross admitted to knowing about the setup, but insisted he hadn't authorized it. "This goes higher than me," he said cryptically, his usual arrogance replaced by unease. "If you dig too deep, you'll put yourself and your daughter in danger." Despite his warning, Lisa refused to back down. She leaked classified documents to a trusted journalist, exposing the conspiracy piece by piece. The story exploded, revealing how rogue elements within the FBI had manipulated events to frame Marcus for espionage, intending to discredit him before eliminating him entirely. The plan had spiraled out of control when Ryan and Max arrived unexpectedly, turning what was meant to be a quiet assassination into a public tragedy. As the truth unfolded, Ryan and Lisa found themselves working together unofficially, sharing information and piecing together the puzzle. Their collaboration was uneasy at first, fraught with tension and unresolved emotions, but over time, a fragile alliance formed. Both were driven by the same goal: justice for Marcus and protection for Ava. For Ryan, the investigation became a chance at redemption. Each new discovery reignited his determination to prove that he wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. For Lisa, it was personal, a way to honor Marcus' memory and ensure no one else suffered because of corruption within the system. By the end of their efforts, the picture was clear. General Marcus Hayes hadn't died because of a simple misunderstanding or reckless policing. He had been the victim of a calculated attack, masterminded by powerful individuals desperate to silence dissent. Though the revelation brought little comfort, it offered something crucial: a path forward. Together, Ryan and Lisa vowed to hold those responsible accountable, no matter the cost. The news of General Marcus Hayes' death spread like wildfire. By sunrise, the story dominated headlines across the country. Social media erupted with outrage as videos captured by neighbors surfaced online. The shaky footage showed flashes of chaos: a man shouting, a dog lunging, and the unmistakable sound of struggle. Though grainy and incomplete, it painted a picture that fueled anger and disbelief. How could this happen? Why did a decorated war hero lose his life at the hands of law enforcement? Protests began almost immediately. In cities nationwide, crowds gathered outside police stations, holding signs that read "Justice for General Hayes" and "Enough is enough." Marches turned into vigils, where people shared stories about the general's service and leadership. Veterans spoke passionately about how Hayes had inspired them, while community leaders condemned what they saw as another example of systemic bias. For many, the incident wasn't just about one man. It was symbolic of deeper issues plaguing society. Meanwhile, Officer Ryan Caldwell became the face of the controversy. His name and photo were plastered everywhere, turning him into both a villain and a scapegoat. Some defended him, arguing he was following protocol in a high-pressure situation. Others vilified him, accusing him of acting recklessly and letting racial bias cloud his judgment. Anonymous messages flooded his inbox, some threatening, others pleading for answers. Ryan tried to stay focused on work, but the weight of public scrutiny pressed down on him like never before. At the heart of the storm was Ava Hayes, the general's teenage daughter. Her grief was raw and unfiltered. She refused to speak publicly, retreating instead into silence as she processed the loss of her father. Friends described her as devastated yet resilient, clinging to memories of Marcus as a loving dad who always made time for her despite his demanding career. Behind closed doors, however, Ava wrestled with questions no child should have to ask. Why didn't anyone help him? Could this have been avoided? For Lisa Monroe, Ava's mother and Marcus' partner, the tragedy cut even deeper. As a high-ranking FBI agent, Lisa prided herself on staying composed under pressure. But this time, she couldn't hold back her emotions. The man she loved, the father of her child, was gone, taken from her in the most senseless way imaginable. Colleagues offered condolences, but their words felt hollow against the backdrop of national outrage. Every news segment, every protest chant, served as a painful reminder of what she'd lost. Amid the chaos, investigators worked tirelessly to piece together exactly what happened that night. Initial reports suggested miscommunication played a role. Witnesses claimed Marcus hadn't identified himself clearly, possibly because he assumed he was safe in a residential area. Others pointed to flaws in police training, questioning whether K-9 units were being deployed responsibly. Each new detail only added fuel to the fire, keeping tensions high. As days passed, calls for accountability grew louder. Activists demanded transparency, urging authorities to release bodycam footage and full investigative reports. Lawmakers introduced bills aimed at reforming police procedures, particularly involving the use of force. Meanwhile, grassroots organizations sprang up, determined to honor Marcus' legacy by pushing for meaningful change. Through it all, one question lingered in everyone's minds. Was this truly an accident, or was there something more sinister at play? For Ryan, burdened by guilt and confusion, finding answers became not just a professional obligation, but a personal mission. And for Lisa, consumed by grief and anger, uncovering the truth meant seeking justice, not just for Marcus, but for all those affected by similar tragedies. Little did they know, their paths would soon intersect in ways neither could anticipate. The meeting between Ryan Caldwell and Lisa Monroe was arranged in a quiet corner of a nondescript cafe, far from prying eyes and the relentless media circus. It wasn't an easy decision for either of them. For Ryan, it felt like stepping into the lion's den. He knew Lisa had every reason to despise him, and facing her would mean confronting not just his guilt, but also the fractured pieces of their shared past. For Lisa, agreeing to meet required swallowing her anger and grief long enough to hear what Ryan had to say. She didn't owe him anything, yet something deep inside compelled her to listen. When Ryan arrived, he spotted Lisa immediately. She looked different, older, harder, but there was still a flicker of the woman he once knew. Her sharp gaze locked onto him as he approached, and for a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, years of separation, and the unbearable weight of recent events. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "Lisa," he began, his voice low and strained. "I don't even know where to start." Lisa didn't respond right away. Instead, she studied him, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her tone was cold but controlled. "You don't have to explain yourself to me, Ryan. I already know what happened. Everyone knows." Her words stung, but Ryan nodded, accepting the truth in them. He deserved her anger, her resentment. He deserved worse. Before he could reply, a young girl entered the room. Ava Hayes walked in hesitantly, her presence commanding immediate attention. At 15, she carried herself with a maturity beyond her years, though her red-rimmed eyes betrayed her sorrow. Lisa hadn't mentioned Ava would be joining them, and Ryan felt a pang of unease. This wasn't just about him and Lisa anymore. It was about the child who had lost her father because of his actions. Ava's gaze landed on Ryan, piercing and accusatory. "You killed my dad," she said bluntly, her voice trembling with emotion. The straightforwardness of her statement hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could he possibly say to ease her pain? Nothing would bring Marcus back, and nothing could undo the damage he caused. Lisa placed a calming hand on Ava's shoulder, though her own emotions seemed barely contained. "Ava, we're here to understand what happened," she said gently, though her tone carried an edge of warning. Turning back to Ryan, she added, "So tell us. Tell us everything." For the next hour, Ryan recounted the events of that night in painstaking detail. He described the anonymous call, the eerie stillness of the neighborhood, and the moment he encountered Marcus. His voice wavered as he explained why he gave the command for Max to apprehend, admitting that fear and miscommunication had clouded his judgment. "I thought he was reaching for a weapon," Ryan confessed, his hands shaking slightly. But when I realized who he was, it was too late. Lisa listened intently, her face unreadable throughout his explanation. Ava, however, couldn't contain her emotions. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she interrupted. "Why didn't you ask questions first? Why did you assume he was dangerous?" Ryan hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't have an excuse, Ava. I made a mistake, a terrible one. And I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life." The room fell silent after that, the weight of his admission hanging heavily in the air. Lisa finally spoke, her voice softer now, but laced with resolve. "Mistakes or not, this doesn't end here. We need answers, Ryan, not just for us, but for everyone who deserves the truth." As they parted ways, Ryan felt a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. Facing Lisa and Ava hadn't been easy, but it was a start, a small step toward understanding and accountability. For Lisa, the meeting reinforced her determination to uncover the full story behind Marcus' death. And for Ava, it planted a seed of clarity, however painful, about the man responsible for taking her father away. Though their paths forward remained uncertain, one thing was clear: none of them would stop until justice was served. The fallout from Lisa's decision to leak the classified documents was immediate and explosive. Within hours, news outlets across the country were buzzing with reports of a shadowy conspiracy within the FBI. A rogue faction allegedly targeting General Marcus Hayes for his vocal opposition to controversial defense policies. The revelation sent shockwaves through both law enforcement agencies and the public. For many, it was confirmation of their worst fears, that corruption ran deep in institutions meant to protect them. Deputy Director Samuel Cross, now exposed as complicit in covering up the conspiracy, became the face of institutional betrayal. His name trended online alongside hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #ExposeTheTruth. Yet, even as protests erupted outside FBI headquarters, demanding accountability, Cross disappeared from public view. Whispers spread that he had gone into hiding, fearing retaliation from those higher up who viewed him as expendable. Lisa, however, paid a heavy price for her actions. Though hailed by some as a whistleblower, she faced immense backlash within the Bureau. Colleagues she once trusted began avoiding her, while others openly accused her of betraying the organization. Anonymous threats poured in daily, some warning her to stop digging, others targeting Ava directly. Despite the pressure, Lisa refused to back down. She hired private security to safeguard her daughter and focused all her energy on ensuring the truth came out fully. Meanwhile, Ryan found himself caught in the crossfire. While the leaked documents shifted public opinion about his role in the tragedy, they also put him under renewed scrutiny. Investigators reopened the case against him, this time examining whether he'd been deliberately misled or manipulated during the incident. Internal Affairs grilled him repeatedly, asking if he'd noticed anything unusual before responding to the call. Ryan admitted to feeling uneasy, but chalked it up to nerves at the time. Now, armed with new evidence, he realized just how carefully the trap had been set, for Marcus, and perhaps for him too. As the investigation widened, key players in the conspiracy started to unravel. One mid-level agent broke ranks, providing testimony that implicated several high-ranking officials in orchestrating the setup. According to the whistleblower, Marcus wasn't the first target, just the most visible one. Others who dared question unethical practices within the system had faced similar smear campaigns, though none had ended so tragically. Public outrage reached a fever pitch when additional files surfaced, detailing illegal surveillance operations conducted on military personnel deemed threats to national interests. Protesters called for sweeping reforms, not just within the FBI, but across all branches of government. Lawmakers scrambled to respond, introducing bills aimed at increasing transparency and holding officials accountable for misconduct. Through it all, Ryan and Lisa continued working together, united by a shared mission. Their partnership evolved from reluctant cooperation into something resembling mutual respect. Ryan admired Lisa's courage in standing up to powerful enemies, while Lisa recognized Ryan's genuine remorse and determination to make amends. Together, they attended press conferences, met with lawmakers, and advocated for systemic change. Ava, though still grieving, began finding her voice amidst the chaos. Inspired by her mother's bravery, she joined activists pushing for police reform and greater oversight of federal agencies. Speaking at rallies, she reminded audiences that behind every statistic was a human story, a father, a mother, a child affected by injustice. Her words resonated deeply, galvanizing support for the movement. By the end of it all, justice felt bittersweet. Several officials were arrested, including Deputy Director Cross, who struck a plea deal in exchange for testifying against his superiors. But no prison sentence could bring Marcus back or undo the pain inflicted on his family. Still, for Ryan, Lisa, and Ava, the fight had changed them. They emerged stronger, not because they'd won, but because they'd refused to stay silent. And though scars remained, they carried the hope that exposing the truth might prevent future tragedies. Months turned into years, and the scars of that fateful night never fully faded for Ryan Caldwell, Lisa Monroe, and Ava Hayes. But time had a way of softening sharp edges, allowing wounds to heal even if they left behind faint marks. Each of them carried Marcus' memory in their own way, honoring his legacy by striving to make the world a little better than it was before. Ryan's new role training K-9 units became more than just a job. It was his mission. He poured every ounce of his energy into teaching officers how to approach situations with patience, empathy, and restraint. His methods emphasized communication over confrontation, ensuring that no one else would have to experience what he did that night. Word of his dedication spread, earning him invitations to speak at conferences and workshops nationwide. Though he never sought recognition, people began calling him a leader in police reform, a title he accepted humbly, knowing it came with great responsibility. On quiet evenings, Ryan often thought about Marcus, wondering if the general would approve of the changes he was helping to create. The thought gave him strength. Lisa, meanwhile, continued her uphill battle within the FBI. While some colleagues remained distant, others began to see her as a force for good, a reminder that integrity mattered, even when it came at a cost. Her efforts led to significant reforms, including stricter guidelines for internal investigations and greater transparency in decision-making processes. Though she knew there was still much work to be done, Lisa took pride in the progress they'd made. In private moments, she allowed herself to grieve for Marcus, letting tears flow freely without judgment. Yet, she also found joy again, in Ava's laughter, in small victories at work, and in the occasional late-night phone calls with Ryan, where they talked about everything and nothing. Ava grew into a remarkable young woman, channeling her pain into purpose. By 18, she had become a prominent advocate for systemic change, speaking alongside civil rights leaders and testifying before Congress about the need for accountability in law enforcement. Her speeches were passionate yet measured, blending personal stories with calls to action. She enrolled in college, majoring in political science, determined to build a career fighting for justice. Despite the weight of her loss, Ava radiated hope, a testament to her father's influence and her mother's resilience. When asked how she stayed strong, she always credited her chosen family, her mom and Ryan, for showing her that healing was possible. The bond between the three of them deepened over the years. Holidays became shared traditions, with Ryan joining Lisa and Ava for Thanksgiving dinners or summer barbecues. They laughed together, argued occasionally, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. One Christmas, Ava gifted Ryan a framed photo of Marcus, taken during a military parade. "So you'll always remember why we're doing this," she said with a smile. Ryan hung it on his office wall, a constant reminder of the man whose death sparked so much change. As the years passed, the nation slowly transformed. Reforms implemented in the wake of Marcus' death rippled outward, inspiring similar movements around the globe. Communities demanded more from their leaders, holding them accountable for past mistakes while working toward a brighter future. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was progress. And progress, as Lisa often reminded herself, was worth celebrating. On the anniversary of Marcus' passing, the three of them visited his gravesite together. They brought flowers, shared memories, and stood silently side by side, finding comfort in their unity. As they walked away, Ava linked arms with both Ryan and Lisa, smiling softly. "We're okay," she said simply. "Dad would be proud." And maybe he was. Somewhere beyond the hurt and the heartbreak, Marcus Hayes' spirit lived on, not just in the lives he touched, but in the countless others who benefited from the changes set in motion by his tragic death. For Ryan, Lisa, and Ava, that was enough. Together, they proved that even in the face of unimaginable loss, love, courage, and determination could pave the way forward. Months after the conspiracy was exposed, life began to settle into a fragile rhythm for Ryan Caldwell, Lisa Monroe, and Ava Hayes. The relentless media coverage slowed, protests turned into organized advocacy groups, and the nation started grappling with the uncomfortable truths uncovered by the scandal. But while the world moved forward, the three of them were still piecing together their lives, one small step at a time. For Ryan, the Department of Justice's ruling brought both relief and lingering guilt. Investigators ultimately cleared him of criminal wrongdoing, acknowledging that he had been misled and manipulated into responding to a deliberately engineered situation. However, they also criticized his reliance on force without exhausting verbal commands first. Suspended from active duty pending retraining, Ryan decided it was time for a change. He couldn't erase what had happened, but he could dedicate himself to preventing similar tragedies in the future. Leaving behind patrol work, he accepted a position training K-9 units, focusing on de-escalation techniques and building trust between officers and communities. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. Lisa returned to the FBI under strained circumstances. Though her actions had exposed corruption, many within the agency viewed her as a traitor. Her once promising career stalled, and she faced subtle ostracism from colleagues who didn't want to be associated with her. Still, Lisa refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into championing transparency and accountability within the Bureau. She pushed for reforms like mandatory ethics training, independent oversight committees, and stricter protocols for handling whistleblower reports. Slowly, she earned back some measure of respect, not through grand gestures, but through quiet persistence and unwavering integrity. Ava, now 16, found solace in activism. Encouraged by her mother and inspired by her father's legacy, she became a powerful voice for systemic change. She traveled to schools, community centers, and rallies, sharing her story and urging others to demand better from those in power. At first, speaking publicly terrified her, the weight of so many eyes watching, so many ears listening. But over time, she grew more confident. People connected with her vulnerability and authenticity, seeing not just a grieving daughter, but a symbol of resilience. Through her advocacy, Ava kept Marcus' memory alive, ensuring his values of justice and fairness lived on. The bond between Ryan, Lisa, and Ava continued to evolve. What began as an uneasy alliance forged out of necessity blossomed into something deeper, a shared commitment to healing and progress. Ryan started visiting Lisa and Ava occasionally, bringing updates about policy changes or new training programs he was developing. Their conversations were awkward at times, filled with pauses and unspoken emotions, but there was warmth too. For Ava, seeing Ryan take responsibility for his role in her father's death helped soften her anger, even if forgiveness remained elusive. One evening, during one of Ryan's visits, Lisa surprised him by inviting him to stay for dinner. Over homemade lasagna, they talked about everything except the past. The weather, Ava's school projects, silly childhood memories. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly, breaking down walls neither realized still stood. For the first time since Marcus' death, the air felt lighter, less suffocating. As Ava joked about Ryan's lack of cooking skills, Lisa caught herself smiling, a genuine smile she hadn't felt in months. By the end of the night, as Ryan prepared to leave, Ava stopped him at the door. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Not for, everything, but for trying, for sticking around." Ryan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll always try, Ava," he replied. "That's the least I can do." As Ryan drove home, he reflected on how far they'd come, not just individually, but together. None of them would ever forget Marcus Hayes or the tragedy that brought them together. Yet somehow, amid the heartbreak and struggle, they had found a way to move forward. Not perfectly, not easily, but with hope. And sometimes, Ryan thought, that was enough.